Hello, I'm your college cook, and today we're going to be cooking a steak. Steak should be one of those things that you should learn first, since working with red meat is a lot easier to do than with other meats, such as chicken. Your cut of meat is also important, but I like to get the slices that are close to my price range. I got this slice for about $4. Since I got it very cheap, it implies it's not the best slice that they'll be offering, but that's okay for me. If you're wondering how long to cook your steak, well, it truly depends on how you like your steak to be cooked. Typically, for a rare steak, you'd cook it for only about 1.5 minutes on each side. For a medium rare steak, you do 2 minutes on each side. For a medium well, it'd be 2.5 minutes. And for a well done steak, you would do 4 more minutes. Now, I say typically because it also depends on the thickness of your steak. There are different types of steak slices. There's flank slices, there's T-bone steaks, New York strips, filet mignons, stuff like that. I personally like to get New York strips on some fancy occasions. When I just crave it on a random day like this, I tend to get the more affordable options. A meat thermometer would be recommended, but it's not a necessity to make it. It's just a bonus if you happen to have one, like I do here. It's also really good for playing with. Your first step is to remove the steak and leave it in the counter to get to room temperature. While waiting for that to get to room temperature, you can start getting your pan into the stove, putting the temperature at high and adding a bit of oil to evenly coat the surface of the pan. Any oil will work. I myself am using vegetable oil. Make sure not to put too much. As the pan heats up, you can start seasoning your steak. For a simple seasoning, you will need salt, pepper, and garlic powder. Make sure to season generously on both sides since most of the seasoning is going to be burnt off while cooking. Also make sure to get the sides too. Get as much of the steak seasoned. After the pan starts to lightly smoke, you know it's time to put the steak in. You'll place down the steak facing away from you to avoid splashing of the hot oil. You might need to rearrange the steak a little bit like I did here. Once the steak is in, just leave it alone. Leave it alone. Don't touch it. The thicker the steak, the longer it'll take to cook. You should be getting a nice coating like this when flipping your steak. If not, you have about 10 seconds of wiggle room to get a coating in there. After you flip your steak, you should start washing your cutting board. We're going to be using this later on, and I don't want people getting sick due to cross-contamination. After washing it and the time is up, take your steak out and leave it to rest. Lower the temperature from high to medium or medium-low. This is when you should get your thermometer and check the internal temperature. If you don't worry, there's a simple trick to it. Gently press on your steak to get a feel for what the redness would be like. If you don't know how it should feel, use 2 fingers and press down on the edge of your hand, and that'll be how a rare steak should feel. The other end of your hand should be how a medium rare steak should feel. And lastly, your wrist is how a well done steak should feel. After a few minutes of your steak resting and your pan losing some of the heat, add some butter, or in my case some spread, which works just as well. Then, you will add your steak back, and just for fun, add some more butter spread. It's very delicious. This is when you'll be using your spoon to baste your steak and get it everywhere. Make sure that steak is lathered in the spread. Also be sure to flip your steak again, just to get both sides coated. This is when aromatics would be added to the steak, such as garlic cloves, rosemary, thyme, all things I don't have right now. But I do have this dried thyme. I'm not too sure if it adds much flavor to it, but it makes me feel good when I put it, so I'm gonna add it anyways. After about 2 minutes, take your steak out and leave it to rest again. This time, drop the last of the butter on top of the steak and leave it to rest for about 7 to 10 minutes based on the size. Again, mine's a small slice, so I'll do 7 minutes. Resting lets the steak reabsorb all of its moisture and the butter drippings on it, sort of like a sponge. Once the time is up, start cutting into it. Be sure to hold the steak with your tongs to keep it in place. Now, I'm not the best at cutting, but that's okay, since it's for myself to eat. Even while plating, I couldn't stop myself from getting a little bit of a bite. Now, this was tasty, but it wasn't the best steak I've ever made. It was $4 after all, and that's the thing about steaks. You're gonna be able to taste the price of it. But that's okay. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this helped you out, even if just a little bit, for making your first steak. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.